We have talked before about what culture is influenced from. One of the things that shape who we are and how we communicate with others is language. Language helps preserve and transfer culture. Enculturation is the process of transferring a society's culture from one generation to the next. And this happens through the medium of language. Children learn culture at young ages as they learn the language. Hence, language, like culture, changed through processes of migration, globalization, and transnationalism. As cultures get in contact with different cultures, the language can be influenced. Some uses may be left behind, and even the meanings attached can change. You have heard previously on the video, campus talk about themselves many different manifestations of how languages of students have increased with mobility or decreased through generations, as in the case of Mariam, who is grandmother and hence herself cannot speak their native languages. So space is not the only thing that changes languages. The language we speak is constantly changing through time, even when it is not lost. Linguistic differences become less pronounced as linguistically diverse groups spend more time together. Across time and space, who belong to the same cultural group can give different meanings to the same uses of language. What we are going to look at in this unit is how these different cultural meanings hidden in our conversation and how we talk influences our communication. So let's look at our plan for this unit. First, in this video, we will talk about linguistic diversity and how we negotiate meanings in intercultural communication. In the next video, we will talk about gestures, the nonverbal behaviors we use during communication. In the third video, you will hear an expert talk about his experiences in different cultural contexts. The fourth video is going to discuss some specific cultural underpinnings and conclude this unit. In video 5, a scholar will reflect upon her cross-cultural communication experiences. The world we live is multilingual, as languages are very important with implications on identity, communication, education, development, social integration. It is important to protect them. Today, it is believed to be over 6,000 spoken languages and numerous spoken dialects and sign languages in the world. Some of these languages have only a couple of hundred people speaking them, and these are called endangered languages. So when their speakers die or stop using the language, then the language will be dead. I myself speak 2 such languages, Circassian and Abkhazian. My ancestral languages from the North Caucasus, an area which was known as the land of 70 languages once. Do you speak or know any endangered languages? How many languages are spoken in your country or hometown? What about your university? Hard to count? Papua New Guinea, with its almost 6.5 million population, is a country where 830 languages are spoken, making it one of the most linguistically diverse countries in the world. English is spoken by about 800 million people, while Chinese Mandarin is spoken by 1 billion. Some other most spoken languages in the world include Hindi, Spanish, and Arabic. Do you speak any of those? As language is a source of knowledge, and knowledge itself is transferred through language between generations, It is important to respect and protect linguistic diversity in the world today. Within all this diversity, it is expected that two people speaking the same language will understand each other. We already talked about how the movement in time and space can influence communication. The literature on effective communication argue that there are 7 barriers in communication. The first of these is physical barriers. What is meant from physical barriers is things like closed doors, noise, or while communicating in written form, for example, your nonverbal communication is not there. The second barrier is perceived, such as the feeling of thinking you are not going to be able to transfer your message for some reason or another. This is usually due to prejudice. Emotional barriers are related to emotions such as insecurity or anger, and interpersonal barriers are those such as lack of desire to communicate. You will hear more about culture as a frame for communication and how it can act as a barrier in further units, and gender barriers in the next unit. I wanted to take your attention to the fact that language is not alone in limiting communication, but it is an important barrier. When two people do not speak the same language, this in itself is a barrier, but when they speak the same language but understand differently. For example, I'm not a native English speaker. I have expertise in sociocultural topics. Working at a university in the UK and teaching in cultural studies, my language was found too simple by some students who had learning experience only with native English speakers. The native speakers would easily use more sophisticated language while teaching a complex concept. I, on the other hand, had learned to simplify my teaching language to be able to transfer my message to non-native speakers when I had taught in Turkey, in Abkhazia, and in Russia. In this regard, we are back to where we have started in the 4th unit, that where you talk, that is space, and when you talk, time matters. As much as what you are talking about and to whom you are talking to. You can talk as much as you want, but as long as the other person doesn't understand, there is no communication. One of the hidden barriers to communication in relation to language is accents and dialects. Don't think that only non-native English speakers have different accents. People growing in the same places may have local accents and dialects according to the geography or cultural or ethnic group they are part of. For example, in London, the capital of United Kingdom, where there are 3 distinguishable accents of English language. Many people mash up these while talking or use a single accent when talking with specific people who also share the accent. But of course, with all the migrants and tourists in London, you can walk hearing thousands of different accents around you and try to follow a conversation between a Scottish, an Irish, an English, an American and an Australian. That is even hard for most native English speakers. The use of jargon, that is the professional or technical language, can also hinder communication. If you use overcomplicated or unfamiliar words frequently, for the other person it can still sound like a foreign language. Unless you are speaking with another professional of the same field, then not using those words, as in my first teaching experience in the UK, may be taught as not sophisticated. Tone of speech is also hear people talk in high tones with people who cannot understand them, but that definitely doesn't help. As we said before, knowing the language is important, but as important and usually ignored is that some people have linguistic disabilities. These can be physical, like a hearing disability, or speaking disabilities, such as stuttering. As you can see, even when 2 people are talking the same languages, it is possible that they are not communicating. These are called hidden barriers, if they are not physical and cannot be understood immediately.